Hello. It's the end of a year. A year is quite a long time. This year I have painted 460 images. There they all are. It doesn't feel like quite as many when you put them all on one page and zoom out. And it's surprisingly the exact same amount that I painted last year, but I thought that to mark the end of 2023 and celebrate the coming of 2024, I would take you through all 460 images one by one, and we can have a little chat about them. So expect this video to be decently long. Maybe I'll split it up or cut out images that I don't think are quite as interesting, but let's begin. I've split them into kind of groups of 30. They're not in exactly the right order. Like, the first thing I did was this self-portrait, and I wanted to harken back to a time where I actually used to paint in quite a stylized way. So I gave it a go. I was putting interesting colors on the edges of things. Look at this nice simplification of an eye with some cools and some warms, and some interesting contrasts. But also I was trying to get comfortable with kind of leaving big areas actually fairly flat and graphic, which is something I don't do enough of. So there's my portrait at the start of the year, and I did one at the end of the year that we'll have a look at as well. Where's number two? Where's number two? The second thing I did is probably here somewhere. We'll just go through them in any order. I did a series of studies on the iPad. I wanted to get back into using the iPad. It's something I bought a couple of years ago, and maybe I'll have to make a video on it. But I'm not a big fan of it. Something just feels off to me when I use it, so I made a little kind of conscious effort to maybe get back into it. These were painted on the iPad. These were both painted on iPad, and the results are fine. The results are honestly okay, but it's more the kind of experience of using it that I had an issue with. Like, I actually really like how I've gone about simplifying the planes of this face and some of the reflections and highlights and things. Another thing I did in January was I started using heavy paint. So this skull is made on heavy paint, which I had a really good time with, and this portrait is also made on heavy paint. But I have this kind of nasty habit that I did again, where I go, oh, I really want to try this thing, and then I try it, and it turns out I'm pretty good at it, and so I don't do it again, because it's not, I guess it's not challenging enough to keep my attention. Like, I feel like I figured out a good way to paint in heavy paint, and then it was on to the next thing. And for me, the next thing was a little bit 3D, because again, it's not something I do too often, but this was like me playing around in 3D Coat, putting it onto into a Blender scene with like an image plane of the moon in the background, and then painting over the whole thing. And it's okay. I just think it still has this kind of inorganic 3D model-y feel to it. Maybe I could have done a much better job of texturing or whatever, but that's something to learn. The other thing that I was playing around with in 3D is actually using more image planes. So this entire Colosseum sort of arena is a collection of 2D images that have been warped in 3D space. Even the characters, I hand painted them in Photoshop, and then I put them into a 3D scene as little figures. Same with the dead bodies, same with the big parapet over the top. I had a lot of fun with it, and maybe it's something that I should do again, because I quite like the result, and I liked that idea that you could build up this kind of huge library of 2D images that you could insert into 3D scenes whenever you liked. Other things of note this month compared with the year prior is I already began to paint from my imagination. Those of you who have been following me for a while will know that this is kind of one of my biggest weaknesses, I'd say, is I do an awful lot of studying. I enjoy studying. I find it really relaxing to just sit down and paint something. But I wanted to challenge myself and start painting from my imagination. So this is like a giant whale creature, and someone's made a little campfire next to its rotting guts. I don't know why you would. Maybe it'd explode or something. This is just some kind of mystical tree with all this juicy mixer brushy stuff going on. This is still from my imagination, but maybe it's a bit less magical. And I think even this was from my imagination, but again, far less magical. Just seeing if I can paint anything. I think a lot of the time we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to paint something magical and insane, like pirates or spaceships or whatever, when actually maybe we can just practice painting with something simple like a tree. And I really like some of these colours and values that I'm getting here. So it's nice to look back. I haven't looked at this since I painted it, so it's I'm kind of looking at it with fresh eyes. Some master studies in there. There's a sergeant. Very kind of low resolution, mixer brushy mess, but actually, you know, maybe quite a successful couple of brush strokes that makes this look like glass. So amazing what you can do. Some more imaginative painting there. Again, just pushing myself in interesting ways. And finally, for the first 30 images, my neighbour knocked on my front door at 10 o'clock at night and handed me an envelope. And I was kind of afraid. I was thinking, what is this? Is it some kind of complaint? And I opened it up, and it was a photograph, a Polaroid photograph of his pet guinea pig. And he knows that I draw and paint, so he asked me to draw it, and I did. And he gave me some flowers for drawing it for him. So it's nice when you can have kind of more human interactions in the world, you know, and make people happy with your art. Okay, next section. So life drawing, doing a bit of life drawing. I actually started using newsprint and charcoal pencil, and it gives you this, you just have to draw loosely because the paper is so thin, but you can get this huge range of tone and mark making and things, and it's really quite lovely. Look at these hands and feet and things. I love this leg. It's just a gradation that gets a little bit darker at the knee and then lighter, with this cast shadow, really sharp, contrasting, you know, soft versus hard, really. And I did this a lot. I did a lot of charcoal pencil and newsprint drawings this month, and I enjoyed it a lot. I also tried some new things again. I'm always trying new things, which is, again, it's weird to look back on, because I try new things and they're quite successful, and then I just don't follow up on them, or I don't expand on them. It's like lots and lots of singular experiments. So with this one, I was drawing character thumbnails, and I just had 2 layers set up with stroke applied in the layer mode, layer styles menu thing, so that whatever I painted would have outlines. But if you do 2 layers on top of each other, you can kind of draw a silhouette, and then you can draw clothing or things on top of that. And I think it works remarkably well, actually. I'm really happy with how these look. But again, I didn't follow up on it, and I don't know why I didn't follow up on it. I have no clue. More life drawing. These are actually, I'm a lecturer at university, and these are some of my students. So this is the life drawing model, and while they were drawing the model, I draw them, because sometimes I've drawn the models quite a few times, and the students have interesting hair, or you can get an interesting angle, or anything else. Here's another model we had. It's my colleague and friend's dog, Rosie, and she was very cute. This is a different dog. This is Archie, but that was fun. I painted a kitchen. This was kind of a standout thing for me. Again, I've always kind of struggled to push my paintings to the next level, really sink in some time, and this was a really good way of showing me that I could if I broke it down into small pieces. So I took something really complicated, like I think I literally googled messy kitchen, and I calculated the perspective of the thing, drew it out, and then I started painting. And when I started painting, I would approach something like this toaster, and I would literally block it out, and then I would say, well, it's gotta have an occlusion shadow, it's gonna have a reflection on the surface below it, it's gonna have a gradation to show that that's metal, it's gonna have some marks on it. I'm trying to paint simply but efficiently. I really like this. It's an air fryer, I think, over here, because it's just a gradation and then this black graphic shape on top, and these markings tell you the perspective of the thing really easily, and with some dark underneath. And when you zoom out, it's pretty realistic. You know, same thing with this plate. So maybe this is something I'll do again in the new year, or I'll make a video on painting kitchens or something. You know, even just this thing, it's painted fairly simply with some flat graphic shapes. Maybe I could have even pushed the graphic shapes a bit more, but when you zoom out, it's fairly real. And you can approach a whole painting one bit at a time. But I think it took me like 4 hours, which is unheard of. Even the self-portrait video that I made pretty recently, that self-portrait took, I think, 3.5 hours. So, you know, it really pushed me. Next, more life drawing and more dogs. Life drawing dogs is so fun. I want to make a video on that as well. I've got some footage of my mother-in-law's pet dog, and I've done some life drawings of him. I just need to make a video. But it's so fun because it's a challenge, and who doesn't love a challenge? You know, the dog is constantly moving around. Not Archie. Archie tends to sleep a fair bit. But getting the difference here in that profile will tell me that it's a Labrador versus a different profile that might tell me that it's a Shih Tzu or a Chihuahua or anything else, right? And being able to capture that is really fun. And you learn a little bit about kind of animal anatomy as well. Look at this fella having a snooze. I painted these with brush pen. Really enjoy drawing with brush pen. Again, I did it during the start of the year, and then I kind of moved on to something else because I have a really tiny attention span. This was a demonstration I did for applicants to the university that I work at, where to introduce them to the idea of concept art and quick iteration, I painted a spoon, which is my trademark at this point, and I turned it into like the Dawnbreaker from Skyrim, or like a scythe, or a trident, or just different swords or bows, or even helmets. And the idea was, you know, speed and just making a lot of different iteration. I think I took one of these from maybe a different open day and turned them into cool weapons. This was the year, and I suppose I should start talking about it now because it's going to be a theme throughout the rest of this tour. This was the year where I started really taking drawing quite seriously and thinking about drawing. And when I talk about drawing, I don't mean lines. I mean the expression of relationships within an image. And a lot of the time it can be easier to figure that out with lines. So I was doing ink drawings like this. I was doing little portraits from my imagination. I think I did them on stream. I made little doorways just with pencil in my sketchbook. There are some with biro as well. And I was really thinking about how much you could express with just a drawing, right? Whenever I think back to when I was a student, I had this sort of awful mindset that was like, painting is the better version of drawing, or the more difficult version of drawing, therefore I'll concentrate on painting. Like, painting's going to prove that I'm a better artist, so I'll move on to that really quickly. But slow down a minute and realize how much there is to learn in terms of drawing, and how much a good drawing can express. So yeah, a lot more drawing than previous years. These are some like Dark Souls-esque little thumbnail sketches. I didn't do anything with them, but I started them and I think they're pretty cool. Maybe I should go back and do something. I like this guy with the bell on his head and no pants. That's fun. Just some studies, your average studies. Again, trying to paint simply with a little bit of texture. I did a games jam where I produced a lot of the UI and art for it. It was a little pixel art game. It was an auto battler, so you could get creatures and stuff to fight each other. And I produced like the you win you lose boards. I produced all the card art, which is pretty simple, but I'd never done pixel art before, so I was really happy that I could play around with this stuff and make some pretty nice kind of graphics. And I think this goes to show that everything's transferable. So I'm not a pixel artist, but I know what materials look like, and I know what proportions look like, and I know what makes an appealing shape and that kind of a thing. So transferring those skills to something completely new like pixel art didn't take me very long. I think it took me like an hour to figure out Aseprite as a program and to get that going. I really like this little tiger. I think it's nice and simple, especially this. It's an elliptical selection that's just half shaded in for the ear. I really like that. Finding simple little ways to do things. I don't like this skull. Something about it is wrong. Maybe the mouth is too long. It's another heavy paint, but it's nowhere near as successful as the other two. So next, again, another student that was in my life drawing class that was had this really kind of unique way of sitting and drawing that was really dynamic and interesting, more interesting than the model we had, so I started drawing the student instead. Similar thing here, we went on a university trip to the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, and I can't concentrate or sit still for very long, so I literally started walking up and down the coach and drawing as many students as I could, which was fun. While I was doing that, if I can find it, I sat down right next to the coach driver. I asked him if I could, and he gave me permission. I sat down right next to him, and I did him a portrait while he was driving and concentrating. And then I did a drawing of how I could see his face in the overhead mirror from behind as well. Then when we were at Pitt Rivers, there was lots of like dinosaurs, guns, birds, taxidermy. Like I quite like some of these skulls. They're a bit weird that you don't often see. This was a really cool iguanodon replica that was there. And again, just describing some of these edges and getting the idea that this cheek is protruding out with a simple line is fun. They had whale skeletons that were hanging from the ceiling, and I think this is just a pig skeleton. But I think I messed up the leg to make the back leg look weirdly human, but I almost like it. It's kind of like a werewolf pig, a werepig, maybe, which is fun. Again, fish and whatever else. This was the month I found a biro, digital biro brush. Thanks to Jake from State Farm. Thank you very much. And this is traditional biro, I think, but honestly it's very difficult to tell what's digital and what's traditional. I'm pretty sure this drawing on the left is traditional biro, and these two drawings of tapirs on the right are digital, and I put them next to each other to show off how close to a traditional biro that brush is. But really it's not the brush itself, it's the way I use it, and I do like drawing with biro a lot, so having that skill transfer over digitally makes a lot of sense. Just some landscapes from Stream. I think this is Benno's cat from the Discord server, and again thinking about big graphic shapes, how I can use those. That's a skull from Life. That was for a video I made, I'm pretty sure, or a class I ran or something else. It was on my windowsill and all this light was pouring through and just brightening up the whole thing. There's more biro drawings. Really, really love biro drawing. Maybe I should make a video. And this is more of the digital biro. And again, whenever I'm studying something, I'm just trying to transfer it to something else from my imagination. Little doodles and sketches. Next. This is a really nice portrait. I was seeing a lot of the like Sam Does Art stuff. You know the stuff. That sort of genre of stylized, colourful portrait of a pretty girl, and I wanted to try it out. So I used very soft brushes, and I think like an elliptical hard brush to get some of these graphic shapes in there. And I really, really enjoyed it. But again, I did the old Joe bad habit where I just didn't go back to it. You know, one thing that I started now is I started doing a lot of regular spit paints. Now I spit paint, if you haven't watched my other video on it, is like a half-an-hour painting based on a prompt. And these are great. These really, really work out your imaginative painting skills, and they show you where those skills are lacking as well. So it's like a giant alien pod has landed, and this dude just stepped out, and he's strangely human. But it's interesting that you can just paint the top plane of his head and his cloak, and leave the rest with a little occlusion shadow at the bottom, and it looks pretty good. And these guys are about to attack him or something else. You know, this person's gone to see an illusionist or a spiritualist, and the butler's in the background, and maybe he's old or he's ill, and his butler disapproves, so the butler's watching, and I don't know, something like that. But that's the fun of it, right, is to come up with all these cool little stories as you're painting, and I have a great time with it. Do we have any more spit paints? Oh, we have loads. Terrarium, you're being watched by a big dude. Grave mistake, they're about to bury someone that's alive. Blackborn, Cloud Piercer, it's just a giant egg that's crashing into Earth and destroying everything. Veins, more eggs. I like to paint eggs a lot. Another thing that I started at this point was the ArtStation challenge, and I really enjoyed doing, well, the little I did of it. I didn't really continue it, but here we are doing some little sketches. I think I did these on the train. I like the idea that this guy had like big boxing gloves, but they were metal. The ArtStation challenge this year, if you didn't know, was Medieval Back and Forth, I think it was called. Yeah, it says there. And it was the idea that you were mixing modern day with like medieval fantasy. So here's my bard, but he's got his hand on an amp and an electric guitar. Or I like the idea that he didn't really know how anything worked, so he was wearing the headphones upside down, and he has an amp, but then he also picked up a ukulele, and it's not an electric ukulele, so he can't even plug it in. That was very fun. Then the same thing here, it's like your traditional knight, but he's realized he can be even more powerful if he gets like weapons of mass destruction. Somehow he's got his hands on a nuclear bomb. And I really like the idea that he's in kind of armor, but he's got like ghillie suit pants, and he looks a bit silly, and he's just armed to the teeth. Or he like thinks that ordinary everyday objects that are harmless are really powerful. Like he thinks a hairdryer is the most dangerous weapon in the world. He's got like a toilet brush on his head and a little rubber ducky on a leash. Just silly ideas. And then I thought, well, you always see those like bombs in war films that they've painted teeth and mouths on the front of them. What if you have that on the front of the helmet? And then I did a little study painting thing to show that off. But again, don't know how successful it is. And I think I got swept up with my full-time job, and I couldn't carry on with the ArtStation challenge. That's as far as I got. Some more doodles. These are again digital, but they look like biro. These are digital, look like biro. These are digital, again biro. So I was really, really happy with that. I think I've spoken about everything in this section. We're making good time. It's been 25 minutes and I've made it through the first row. We have 2 rows left and a little bit. So it's looking like the video is going to be like an hour and a half if I keep up this pace. So enjoy it, I guess. Enjoy it. Right. More life drawing. Again, charcoal pencil on newsprint. Really, really fun. Getting Ellis and one of our models on a bike and getting that kind of dynamism. I think there's a... Maybe I didn't scan it in. There are lots of drawings in Sketchbooks that I just end up not scanning as well. But some of this is really quite interesting. Some of these forms, like this arm in the background, how stretched and elongated that is. But also, he's quite an old guy, so there are these tension or torsion lines on all of his muscles that are really, really cool. More spit paints. I started using Krita, so this is a Krita painting. Again, if I have an excuse to use a new piece of software, I'm going to use it. I'm going to see how it works. I was actually quite pleased with how sort of soft I could get all of this, as long as I reinforced it with a little bit of line afterwards. Not the same with his face, certainly. But maybe something to go back to and to think about. I was enjoying Krita. I was enjoying Krita a lot. And I think I go back to it later in the year again, but it's almost difficult to justify using because for my job I have to use Photoshop, so I don't know how much time I want to spend noodling around in a program that I'm not going to use on a day-to-day basis. Maybe I'll think about it. I still have this skull. I've painted this skull so many times now, and it serves me really, really well. I'm never going to get bored of painting this skull in different lighting scenarios. This is just a different angle in my office. I've got a plate there, probably with some crumbs on in the background. Another painting from my imagination. Again, I kind of default to trees. For those of you who don't know, I have a bonsai tree collection. I think trees are really, really interesting and really, really cool. So painting them is really fun as well. This is my sister. She had I took some photos. I did the sort of the photography for my brother's wedding, because when you're the artist of the family, that's what happens. And my sister had this crazy intense glare in one of these photos, and I knew that I wanted to paint it. Knights, those are from life. Same guys. It's 2 guys that come in every year, the men at arms, and I have the pleasure of drawing and painting them. It's really, really fun. This is like a little deer, which is fun. This is a Wikimedia study if you've watched my most recent video, so there you go. This is a map crunch. How simple can these buildings get? Can they just be little selections? I think so. Again, thinking again this year about drawing. How can I split these things up into line, into value, sort of blending the lines a little bit between line and shape, right? So some of these lines are getting quite big, quite thick. More drawings from life. I really like the difference between a quick drawing as they're getting changed. Like I still really like this drawing. I think it's full of gesture, and it's lovely. And then a drawing that you sit down and I think I spent maybe 15-20 minutes on this one, just getting the proportions right, measuring it out a bit more, being a bit more thoughtful and careful with it. You get something quite nice. More spit paints from my imagination. The really interesting thing about this, well, I find it interesting, is this house in the background. All I'm doing is putting the highlight of the roof on it, and this block here for like a water tower on the side, and it looks quite 3D. So I'm almost kind of losing the portion of the building that's in shadow to the background. Like there's no edge on that building there, no edge at all. I was doing a similar thing here, but I reinforced it a bit more because it's in the foreground. That building in the background's got a similar thing going on. Another one where, you know, the prompt was dying light, and my thought was first the video game, but then I thought, no, I'll do something else. And I thought about like a lighthouse in a storm. And it's interesting that we don't even need the lighthouse, we just need the light from it. And you sort of know that there's a lighthouse in there. Maybe the cone of the light could have been a bit more specific. And then just painting the deck of this ship, getting some kind of highlight on it to show that it's wet. It's reflecting the sky and the sea around it. This is a master study of a Remington painting, and then this is my painting that I did from it. This is a really good thing that I think people should do more, is if you do a study of something, apply it immediately. Apply it to something before you forget what you learned. You know, I think it works really well. Another thing that I started doing at this point was I went back and I started reassessing how I think about gesture drawing and figure drawing. I could show you some from last year, and they were very literal is the only word I can think of. Like, I would draw every line, I would draw the whole silhouette. And actually you can simplify things and break down the figure into much more abstract ideas. Like, we don't have the edge of the body here, but what we do have is the curve of the spine that almost goes into that leg and then crosses over where it meets the calf. And some of them are really effective. Some of them aren't as effective at all, but some of them are really effective. Look at the extension on that. So I was enjoying looking at figures in a different way, and it's something that I sort of kept up for, I think, a month or a month and a half. And then I decided that I'd had enough of it and I wanted to move on, so that's what I did. So next we have, I actually did a little concept art project. So we have a character design module at the university, and I wanted to do an example for it for the students. So I started with simple silhouettes of but when I say silhouettes, they're not just pure black silhouettes, it's more like shape, playing around with shape in interesting ways. And then I played around with like painting them up a little bit more and maybe in a bit more detail. It still didn't take me very long. And then I chose one that I thought would fit the brief, because that's the other important thing, is some of these are really fun. I actually really like the bottom left and this guy with the sunflower on his back, like a snail shell, but they just didn't fit the brief, so I went with this guy. Playing around with not just colour, but it's almost like thinking about him like it's a video game skin, and I'm changing bigger things like hair and what's in the bowl, so the core components are still there, the shapes are still very similar, but some of these things are fundamentally changing the character in interesting ways. Is that going to be in the next section? Oh, we'll skip forward a second. So this was the final result of that. I did it in a weekend. The students had, I think, 12 weeks to do it, and I wanted to show them what you could do in a weekend. So there you go. There's him. Let's go back. What else did we do? More spit paints. I'm still keeping it up. If I were to say I was proud of anything this year, that would be it. Is the amount of imaginative painting I've done. It's a scary thing if you haven't done it, and certainly in the past I've kind of shied away from it because I've not been very good at it, because it's difficult. But this year I just thought, no matter what the consequences are, I'm gonna do loads and loads of imaginative painting and we'll see what happens. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Like, this is an example of it going pretty well. The perspective on the table looks wonky. The idea was that he's falling onto it and it's like leaning forward, like we're mid-action, but I don't think we have enough movement elsewhere to make that obvious. Where else have we got a spit paint? Stilt Walker. It's like a big War of the Worlds style mech. Cybo just got some screens. This is actually one of my other studies that I've pasted into the screen there. This is one that's maybe less successful. I like some of the mark making up here and some of the colours, but I think the drawing is just lacking. I don't really understand how this armour works, like this pauldron's coming over. I think the proportions are a bit messed up. I'm not sure why he's trying to like block an arrow. He should be running towards the horse or away from it or something else. But again, this like rock in the background is quite nice. So there are elements I'd take and elements I would leave, and that's the way the cookie crumbles, you know. And you have to look at it objectively and not be afraid to make mistakes and review them. More figures. some really quite nice stuff going on here. Statue, some little props, just your average studies. That's a Tadema study. I was actually really happy with the tiger skin rug at the bottom. But I think that sums it up for that section. It's a lot of imaginative painting. Again, a lot more figures. Maybe I should make a video on how I approach figure drawing. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd like to see. But some of this is quite interesting. Yeah, good. Next. I try to self-portrait again. I'm not too happy with it. I think the mark making, that kind of hatching that I'm sort of known for, is too uniform here, and it doesn't follow form. It's just kind of a filter that's slapped on top of everything, and I don't like how that looks. I want the hatching to be sort of woven into this 3D form and the dimensionality of it all, and I want it to enhance the drawing and not be a hindrance on top. So I'm counting this as a failure, but I learned from it, and later on I produced something quite nice. We had this model dressed as like almost like a Charlie Chaplin-esque character with a bowler hat, and it was really cool to get these quite dynamic drawings in. I think this is like a 30-second little sketch. And then we gave the model a rocket launcher that we made out of a PVC pipe, and we got some more drawings out of it. Other interesting life models we had. This is Dan. Dan is... I don't know if Dan's a drag queen, if Dan actually performs as a drag queen, but Dan is a farmer by day, and by night turns into effectively a drag queen. And he had these insane shoes that were just so reflective. I got out my brush pen and I started trying to sort of get some sort of understanding of how reflective they are and how you would paint that, but it was so high contrast, it was really tricky. But that was interesting. Oh, how could I forget? This month, a few really cool things happened. So first of all, I went to the Playgrounds event in Berlin, and I really enjoyed it. Not because of the event itself, although it was nice, but because I got to meet up with some of my internet friends for the first time. So this is Arne. You might have heard of him. He's a CGMA instructor, but we've been painting for years and years together. He's really the reason we all started sort of getting together at 6 AM and doing all these studies. He's a big part of that. There's Hannah and Anais and Bram. Shout out to the Belgians. And it was just lovely to hang out with artists and sit in a park and draw each other and talk art after talking online for so long. So that was really nice. Obviously I was doing drawings in the airport, which was cool. But it's also Spoon June, right? Spoon June. So there's some spoons. I started off by doing some like spoons as just studies. And very quickly I decided, no, this is the year I design things from my imagination. So that's what I did. I started designing spoons instead, and I had a lot more fun with it. So I think I'm going to do the same thing in 2024, sorry. I'm going to try and approach Spoon June in a similar way and design these. Like, look at how cool this is. And all of this is from my imagination. I'm really proud of it. Like a sword spoon. It's a bit wacky. This is like a weird spoon. I don't know what it is really. It's not very functional with a hole in it, but it's cool looking. And that was my goal. Again, another few spit paints, imaginative paintings here and there that are quite nice. Danger on the Horizon. He's like a futuristic atomic farmer, and some of his crops have just exploded or something. So there we go. Obviously more figure drawings. And this was another museum while we were in Berlin, which was really cool. Next we have more figure drawings. I'm starting to add in a little bit of value, but you can get really far with just a soft round brush. I know people warn beginners to stay away from the soft round brush like it's the plague, but it's pretty powerful, and it makes you think about cast shadows and form shadows and separating them, and it's really interesting, I think. Just a study from a film. I can't remember which film. Another study from an image. Another spoon from my imagination. It's like a little bird that you'd pour water out of or something. I don't know why you'd want that. Another spoon from my imagination. Another spoon from my imagination. This is my fiance's auntie's dog called Ernie as a puppy, and that was fun to paint. More poses, studies, poses, studies, spoon, paint from my imagination, spoon. Nothing really of note, just a lot of drawing the same stuff, painting the same stuff. I really like this painting from my imagination, to the point where I think in the new year I'd quite like to make a whole world based on it. And I'm not sure if anyone's seen Monster Garden on YouTube. It's really cool. I'd go and check him out. But I'd want to do a kind of similar thing where I document the process of building this world and put it on YouTube. I think that would be fun. Okay, next. This was really fun to paint. It's all in Photoshop, but I was really using as much Photoshop wizardry as possible to figure this out and get this working, basically. So I did an underpainting using like different layer blending modes, which gives you this oil painting sort of effect. I actually painted on a canvas texture and made sure that the flow was turned down on all my brushes so it picked up that canvas texture. I was looking at a lot of Richard Schmid work as I was painting this and trying to capture that feel. And I feel like it went pretty well, so maybe it's something I'll do in the future. Back into Critter. So this is a Critter painting. That's a Critter painting. That's a Critter painting. I think that's a Critter painting as well. I think all of these are in Critter, to be honest. That's my mother-in-law's Shih Tzu, Teddy. But like a little cartoony, stylized version of him. Again, I don't feel like you have to be a stylized artist to do stylized work. I feel like it's something, you know, if you're just an artist, you can dabble in it and you can try it and you can see how it works. I wouldn't say that my work is stylized in any way, but I like this, it's successful, and that's because I feel like I have a good understanding of what shapes are appealing and what aren't, and so I can do whatever I want, and that's quite fun. Figure drawing, imaginative painting. It's very Elden Ring. I think I had just finished playing Elden Ring at the time, so you'll see a lot of Elden Ring inspired stuff. Lots of playing around in Critter and like going back to my roots, doing a hard round painting. These are little thumbnails for a character that is I guess I will show you in a minute. But this was for On Billen's Discord challenge, which was really fun. So I was trying all sorts of different stuff. I didn't really know what I wanted. More just studies. This skull from life in Critter. I can't remember how I got this iridescent colour, but it's really cool. And maybe I should go back to Critter. More just doodles from my imagination. Again, like, can I draw it like this, or can I wanted to see if I could do a little anime face, because you may not know, but when I started drawing when I was like 15 years old, that's all I did was anime. I wanted to see if I could remember any of it. But I love doing little pages of sketches like this, whether it's in my sketchbook or digitally, because I can imagine that these are characters. I can imagine that this is the town blacksmith and he's fairly surprised, or this guy's some kind of bruiser, or there's like an elf woman. And it doesn't take much to imagine that, and I can think about the rest of their character. And maybe I should go back and, you know, turn him into a full character. We'll see. More Critter. You can get some really crazy paint textures going in Critter, and they're really effective. Like the surface of this guy's skin is really quite painterly in a very appealing way. And then you get this roughness here, and you soften out something like the eyes to contrast the material. But I'm also getting like line in here and everything else. It's difficult to explain some of these paintings because I don't know, I feel like I go into a fugue state sometimes, and I return and a painting's there. This is the character I was designing. It's Sergeant Thornbeam. He's really grumpy. He's modelled after myself, obviously, and he's a really, really, really good shot. He's like the best shot in the world, but he's got a really faulty gun. So it's almost like if he does hit something, he'll kill it, but the chances of his gun firing are like 10%. So I thought that would be a really fun dynamic as a character. Is he's not very reliable, but when he does manage something, it's pretty good. And he's got this ridiculously long neck, and I thought that was funny. So there's Sergeant Thornbeam. Thinking about a lot of character, but again, seeing how far I can just get with drawing without painting, and you can get really far. I imagine the only thing that painting would add to this is not even a sense of materials. The materials are there, just color. But I don't need color really. Not for this anyway. So don't underestimate drawing. You can get a decent way through. I painted my teddy drawing that we saw before. Here he is, the little fella. Just again seeing how I can get that kind of simple drawing to read with a fairly complex painting. There's a lot going on here. And I think it works well. I thought it would be maybe more jarring and I'd have to go for something more simple, but oh well. This is like a little imaginative painting of this herald is giving the queen some bad news, and there are guards standing back, and I really, really like how I painted these guards. He's literally just a combination of reflected light from the sky, occlusion shadow, and reflected light from the ground. And you get like a little figure. It's really simple, but quite effective. Okay, we've done row 2 in record time, I think. Let's move on to row 3 while the iron is hot. I started doing a mentorship with Mario Alfonso. Check him out if you haven't already. And part of the mentorship was a lot of like figure drawing. So breaking down the figure into geometry, into primitive shapes, which isn't something I often do, but I enjoyed it. I also started doing this with a paintbrush and a pot of ink, which was difficult, but I was trying to challenge my inner Kim Jung-gi and really get used to drawing with a brush and a pot of ink. And I was enjoying it. I don't know why I've stopped. I just have to remind myself that I enjoy things and go back to them again. Actually going out and about and drawing people with pencil, drawing some of my little bonsai trees with pencil, but thinking about the pencil in a different way. So I'm not restricted by line here at all. In fact, there's not much line going on. A lot of this is me thinking about shape and just shading in shape with the pencil, like I'm painting. Which again could be a really cool YouTube video, painting with pencils. So I think that's really fun. Another thing that I started doing is these 10 brushstroke paintings, again part of Mario's mentorship, but breaking down an image into just 10 brushstrokes, and you get a really good sense for what's essential and what isn't. This is a good example. So my first attempt, I thought, well, I'll get that eye socket in. But do I need it? Could I use that brushstroke to instead describe a specular highlight on the forehead? Well, I could, and I think that's more effective. So, there is a list of priorities when you're painting, and sometimes when you sit down and you just want to do a one-to-one photocopy of something, you don't prioritize anything because you're going to get round to it all eventually, right? You're going to paint the whole thing eventually, so you don't need to say, well, I'm definitely going to make sure that I have this painted or this painted. There's no pressure to make decisions like that, but this makes you think about it, and then that transfers to your own painting, especially from imagination, and especially when you don't have very much time. If I want this to read as a head, is this highlight more important or is this eye socket more important? figuring that out is interesting. I did that a bunch of times. We don't need to look at them all, but another good example is like, you wouldn't think it, but that corner in the top left of this painting is really important. It tells us what the angle of the ceiling is and where the light's coming from. And you wouldn't immediately assume that that is like the most important thing here, but I found that it was pretty cool. Here's my Sergeant Thornbeam, and he's in his camp. But again, he's kind of useless, or not useless. He's really, really unlucky. So he tried to light a fire, and it started raining really heavily, and he's just sat there grumpy, surrounded by like 50 frogs. They're all climbing on him, and different sizes, and there are some big ones in the background that kind of sort of Ghibli inspired. I thought that was fun. More like drawing with pencil, but thinking about it in terms of shape. This is my colleague Jared, the guy who owns the dog. He did this beautiful drawing of this character, and I wanted to show him what it would look like painted, because he didn't tend to, at the time, paint in a very painterly way. It was sort of like graphic flat shading. I wanted to show him what it might look like to convince him to give it a go. And so I painted over his line art. So it's his character and his drawing. I've just painted it, which is fun. This is more Critter, I'm pretty sure. And it's very painterly and 3D feeling, which I like. Okay, these are D&D characters for the university. Hosted a charity event where they played D&D for like 24 hours solid, and they asked me and a couple of other lecturers to design or draw their characters. Again, I just thought I'd hand draw them. So no painting, nothing else, just drawing, see how far I can get, and I'm pretty happy with the result. Imaginative painting again. Rock Golem drawing. These are from videos on YouTube of just like footage of train stations in Japan where loads of people are walking past the camera, and you can just pause at different points and try and sketch these people within the same image. So this is, all these people weren't on the screen at the same time. Maybe just this guy was, and then I play it a little bit, and then I draw this person in, or these people in the background, and you get a more complete scene afterwards. Again, more just drawing with a brush and a pot of ink, and getting things like this. I was trying to do the Kim Jong-gi smudgy mess, but maybe it's just a mess. Again, painting from my imagination, inspired by Min-Yum, these vibrant blues in the background. This is heavy paint of my brother's couch. Lots of figures, more paint from my imagination. Figures from my imagination. That's part of the D&D thing for the university. Painting from my imagination. This is very sort of Spider-Verse-y. This big creature coming through a portal, which is cool. Trees, houses, more like a zombie, but again more brush and ink. Skulls, vases. I think I went to Belgium pretty shortly after this, and I wonder if I included any of my drawings. Did I not include any of them? I don't think I've scanned in any of those. I went to Belgium to visit all my Belgian friends, and I filled a decent amount of my sketchbook for the drawings, but I guess I didn't scan them in. They're mine, my Belgian drawings. You're never going to see them. I guess they're private. Lots of painting from my imagination coming up. So this is from my imagination, half an hour. This is from my imagination, half an hour. This is from my imagination. It's a film study, imagination, film study. I went to the Concept 101 event in London. I recommend it, it's really good. And one of the things that I did there was sat and drew the backs of people's heads. This is Biro, but again, I'm not thinking of it in terms of line, I'm thinking of it in terms of tone. So if you sort of zoom out, you can get this sense that it's a crowd of people in front of me. I also started my module, Mastering Studied Concept, which I wrote and ran for the university, and I had a lot of fun with that. So some of these demos are from the university. I painted, this is like a Japanese throne room, and I had intended to carry on painting it, but I didn't. So again, from my imagination, weirdly Korean feeling. I don't know why. I had like a Korean building in mind. I don't know if anyone else gets Korean vibes from this, but playing around with how you can paint trees, you know, actually some of these roots and the trunk and things are getting lost, but as long as we have this shadow underneath that canopy, it's quite interesting. More drawings from Concept 101 of just the backs of people's heads, or people that were sat next to me, or anything else, so I'm sorry if you got drawn. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Painting from my imagination. I actually started doing sculptures in 3D Coat. So if you've ever used 3D Coat before, it's a really good program. It's voxel based, and it really feels like clay in a very intuitive and interesting way. So here I am, like sculpting different things just during my lunch breaks, and then painting over them, or whatever else. There's another sculpture, some more paintings from my imagination of all sorts of things really, but there you go. Next, watercolor painting. I've not really used watercolor before, but I was sort of trying to use it like acrylic paint, which I realized isn't the best, so I probably wasted a lot of paint, but it was just a scrap piece of paper anyway. This is a demonstration for one of my classes of like sort of a Feng Zhu style approach to drawing rocks. This was a life drawing model we had that had, again, this insane like fur coat and these crazy shoes, but just drawing things out with biro and seeing what I can describe. We've got some more of those here, and it was really, really fun. These are impossible to figure out, no matter how much I tried. Not focusing on things like hands and faces, because it's a big time sink, and when you only have a pose that lasts so long, you want to focus on bigger things like gesture and weight and all sorts of other stuff. This is another model we had called Rishabh, who is in this sort of traditional Indian clothing. Do we have any more? Here he is. And this is more charcoal pencil on newsprint that I think works quite well in an interesting way. This is heavy paint. This is Jared again. I got the train to work every day with him, so started painting him on my phone, just with my fingers on heavy paint, which is nice. More demos for my classes. This is again Rishabh, but you know, it's a very different approach. I'm not so much focused on shape now as I am line, and the difference between the two is interesting to capture. Here he is again in colour. I found a coloured biro set lying around and I claimed it. Another word for that is stole, but we'll use claimed. So I was playing around with, you know, do I combine all the colours or do I save different colours for different materials? Or do I just use it like a regular biro but with a bit of colour to make it, you know, my page a bit more lively? Really love that the palm leaves here are like going into the shape of his head and the shadows there. It's interesting. I was waiting for my fiance to finish work. This was in the cafe she works at, which was fun. Skulls, train seat on heavy paint, man on heavy paint, my shoe on heavy paint. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the year, and we're going to just go over an hour, so I'm very sorry about that. This was the Big Self-Portrait. I already talked about this in a separate video, but I really like what I did here. It's going to be tough to outdo this or do a better one next year. We'll see. I went to the park, and do I have the other version saved? Yeah, here we are. I went to the park and I did this watercolor painting, just because I was bored and it was a sunny day. And I kind of like it. It's fairly overexposed, but also the scan has made the paper seem a lot brighter than it was. And then I just painted over it digitally, and I was trying to see like how little I needed to touch up things to really clean it up. And I didn't have to touch up much at all, really. Paint from my imagination. It's fun. These self-portraits I did with a mirror, and it was 15 minutes each. So I literally put a mirror next to me, and I really hurt my neck looking back and forward. So I put the mirror on the floor. I love this graphic shape for that highlight on the chair arm. There's one more somewhere. Yeah, I put the mirror on my lap and I glared down at it, and when you look at this, it looks kind of complex, but all of the shapes you're seeing are all the same color and value that I'm just plopping in to make shadow shapes. So it's basically just black and white, but with, you know, yellow and brown instead. I designed some banana mimics, so you've got some different banana mimics there. They're kind of spooky. Studied some vehicles from different angles, and then actually worked on top of them to change them into something new. So this is the study, and then this is like a plow. It's like an old-timey farming steampunk vehicle, which is interesting. Again, a bit of 3D coat sculpting, just abstracting the human figure. I really like some of these legs. Just the shapes, how blocky that is, especially this one extending backwards. I like that. And this kept my attention for a few weeks, actually, and then I stopped. Maybe I should go back and do some 3D coat sculpture. Although I just got a VR headset, so maybe I'll do some like Adobe Medium sculpts instead. Another sculpt of a monkey. This is like a crocodile coffee pot demonstration, again for my students at the university. Some vehicles, some rocks, another monkey, more 3D coat stuff. And I thought I'd have a go. I see all these Chinese artists on ArtStation do these really nice sort of charcoal portraits. So I just thought I'd have a go before I went to work. And it was pretty good. And I told myself I'd do more of them, and then I did. So there you go. We've got this last little section now, and then we are finished. So lots of painting from my imagination. Again, I did these in class. These were demonstrations for students. They are so insanely Elden Ring inspired that you couldn't make it up. So there's lots of sort of Elden Ringy stuff. This guy's smiting a big spider creature. There's a creature in the lake, and this guy's got his little pet dog, and they're about to fight it. Or it's just like a factory assembly with loads of these cauldrons that are actually sat in another liquid. This is just a nice still life of my skull. I was thinking about the Oreo cookie theory of value distribution, which read Devin Corwin's Creative Fundamentals PDFs if you want to know what that is. It's basically the idea that you can compress groups, and there's not much range within groups, but there's a big difference between them. So it's either this quite flat color for most of the skull, or we jump up to the highlight group and it's separate, and the highlight doesn't like blend into everything else very easily. Little creature. This I won't talk about. This is a surprise. In the new year I'm going to be making a video about this, and similarly about this. If you can guess what I've done, I'll be impressed. And just another dude with gas coming out of him. So I think that's it. That is my year. 460 images, and we've not spoken about every single one because most of them are just studies. But how have you done this year? You know, maybe take a moment to reflect on all the work that you've done. Take a look at it. You know, actually going through this has helped me because I'm looking back at some of this other stuff and I'm thinking that's a really cool approach. Maybe I should go back and do that. Or maybe I should go back and I should work up some of these paintings. Or I didn't even talk about this one. I used a load of 3D for this one. I'm friends with Tom Hicks, who did some work for Bungie and works at Expression Games, and he does these spaceships all the time, and I wanted to try and do what he does, but maybe in a more painterly way, because it's sort of my thing, and I was happy with that. So tons of stuff to think about and carry over into the new year. Write yourself a little list of goals and stick to them, you know. One of the things I'm quite happy with here is I did more than one study per day. Not 2 studies per day, but like 1.5 if you average it out, right? So I couldn't ask for more than that, I don't think, not with a job. So I'm pleased with myself. Right, if you want to have a chat about anything, if you want to talk art, if you want to receive a paint over or whatever else, I'm going to plug myself here and I'm going to say join the Patreon. I can give you access to maybe my whole study folder. Maybe I'll put my study folder on the Patreon. How about that? And you can just go through these on your own or save them or look at them in high res or anything else. I think that would be cool. So enjoy. Thank you for watching. I know it's been a pretty long video, but have a great day. Have a great Christmas, and have a great New Year. Okay, good. Bye bye.